I never thought my own son could stab me in the heart like this, but at my 70th birthday, in the heart of my Savannah mansion, James didn't just betray me, he obliterated me. With a sneer, he smashed a towering cake into my face, screaming, "This house is already mine!" The room gasped, phones flashing as the icy frosting burned my skin, each drip a wound deeper than the last. My soul shattered under that chandelier, the pain so raw I could barely breathe. How could my boy do this? Stay with me. You need to see what I did next. The sting of that cake still burned my face as I stood there, the Savannah air heavy with the scent of magnolias and betrayal. My 70th birthday party, meant to be a celebration of my life, had turned into a public execution of my dignity. My son James had just hurled a three-tiered monstrosity into me, his words, "This house is already mine," still echoing in my ears like a gunshot. The chandelier above flickered, casting jagged shadows across the 2,000-square-foot dining hall, where my late husband William's legacy lived in every oak beam and stained glass window. This wasn't just a house, it was our life, our love, built over 40 years. And James wanted to tear it down for cash. I wiped the frosting from my eyes, my hands trembling with rage, but I kept my chin high. The crowd, old friends from Savannah's historic district, James's slick business partners, stared, their whispers cutting deeper than the humiliation. James stood across the room, his 6-foot frame rigid, his jaw tight like he'd planned this spectacle. Beside him, Clara, his wife of 5 years, flashed that polished smile I'd grown to loathe. Her blonde hair gleamed under the lights, but her eyes were cold, calculating, like a real estate agent sizing up my home for auction. They'd been circling this 10-bedroom estate for months. Ever since James's Atlanta condo project started bleeding money. "Mother," James said, stepping closer, his voice dripping with fake concern, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're getting older. Managing this place is too much. Let us take it off your hands. Sign the deed tonight. It's what Dad would have wanted." Dad. William. The man who poured his soul into this house. He'd roll in his grave hearing James twist his memory like that. I gripped the edge of the mahogany table, my voice low but sharp. "This house stays mine, James. You know why." His eyes narrowed, and Clara's smile twitched like I'd slapped her. "You're being selfish," she snapped, her southern drawl laced with venom. "We're trying to secure your future." Secure my future? They meant their own. I'd heard the rumors. James's company was drowning in debt. Millions owed to shady lenders. This house, valued at $3 million, was their lifeline. I turned away, my heels clicking on the hardwood, but their whispers followed me. They thought I was weak, a tired old woman clinging to a fading dream. But they didn't know the fire in me, not yet. As I slipped into the quiet of my study, the weight of their greed pressed against my chest. I needed to face the truth of what my son had become, and it was going to hurt like hell. I stumbled into my study, the heavy oak door slamming shut behind me, sealing off the echoes of that wretched party. The Savannah night pressed against the tall windows, the moonlight barely piercing the darkness of my 400-square-foot sanctuary. My face still stung from the cake James had smashed into it, the sticky frosting clinging to my skin like a badge of betrayal. I collapsed into William's old leather armchair, my hands shaking, not from fear, but from a pain so deep, it felt like my heart was being carved out. How had it come to this? My son, the boy I'd raised in this very house, had turned into a stranger, his voice still ringing in my ears. "This house is already mine!" I wanted to scream, to shatter the silence, but all I could do was sit there, drowning in the weight of my own heartbreak. The study smelled of old books and polished wood, a reminder of the life William and I built together. This house, our 10-bedroom estate on Savannah's historic Abercorn Street, wasn't just a home, It was our legacy. Every brick laid with love, every garden rose, planted with care. I'd spent 40 years keeping it alive after William passed, tending to the 2-acre grounds, hosting church fundraisers, and welcoming neighbors for sweet tea on the veranda. Now, it felt like a tomb, and I was buried alive in it. I reached for a framed photo on the desk, James at 10, his gap-toothed grin beaming as he helped William paint the gazebo. Back then, he'd run through these halls, his laughter bouncing off the walls, calling this place our castle. Where was that boy now? Had Clara's greed poisoned him, or had I failed him somehow? I stood, my legs unsteady, and crossed to the bookshelf. My fingers brushed the spine of William's old journal, its leather worn from years of handling. I pulled it down, my breath catching as I opened to a page dated 15 years ago, just before his heart gave out. His handwriting was steady, a contrast to my trembling hands. James is bright, but I see a hunger in him, he wrote. He's dazzled by money, by power. I pray Helen can guide him, but I fear he'll break her heart if the world gets its claws in him. Tears burned my eyes, blurring the words. William saw it coming even then. He'd warned me, but I'd brushed it off, thinking love would keep James grounded. I was wrong, and the pain of the truth cut deeper than any knife. I sank back into the chair, clutching the journal like a lifeline. The house was quiet now, the party's music long faded, but I could still hear the whispers of the guests. Savannah's elite, my so-called friends, gossiping about the spectacle. Poor Helen, they'd say, their pity as sharp as their stares. I'd spent decades building a reputation in this town, chairing charity galas, hosting book clubs in this very room. Now, I was the woman whose son humiliated her, the widow who couldn't control her own family. The loneliness was suffocating, like the humid Georgia air before a storm. I'd given James everything, private schools, summer camps, my unwavering belief in him. And for what? To stand here, alone, with his betrayal smeared across my face like that damned cake. I walked to the window, staring out at the garden where William and I used to sit, sipping coffee as the sun rose over the oak trees. "What would you do, William?" I whispered, my voice breaking. "How do I fight my own son?" The silence answered, heavy and unforgiving. I pressed my hand against the cool glass, my reflection staring back. An old woman, 70 years of lines, etched into her face, but not broken, not yet. The pain was unbearable, yes, but beneath it, something stirred. A spark of fury, a refusal to let James and Clara strip away everything I'd fought for. I turned back to the journal, flipping to another page. "Helen is stronger than she knows," William had written. "If the day comes, she'll stand tall." I closed the book, my jaw tightening. He was right. I wasn't done. The hurt still clawed at me, but it was sharpening into something else, resolve. James and Clara thought they could bully me into surrender, that I'd hand over this house to save their sinking ship. They were wrong. I straightened, wiping the last of the frosting from my cheek with a handkerchief. The study's grandfather clock ticked steadily, counting down to a fight they didn't see coming. I didn't know their full plan yet, but I knew one thing. They were plotting something darker, something that would make that cake incident look tame. I had to be ready, and that meant facing the truth of what my son had become, no matter how much it tore me apart. The study's silence wrapped around me like a heavy blanket, but it couldn't dull the ache in my chest from James's betrayal. That night, after the cake incident at my 70th birthday party, I sat clutching William's journal, his words about my strength burning in my mind. I wanted to believe I could fight, but the pain of my son's actions, his cruel shout, "This house is already mine," still clawed at me. The Savannah moonlight filtered through the curtains, casting eerie patterns across the hardwood floor of my family's historic home. I was still reeling from the humiliation, the way the neighbor's eyes had bored into me as the frosting dripped down my face. But something shifted in me that night. The hurt was still there, raw and jagged, but it was fueling a fire I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't just going to sit here and let James and Clara steal everything William and I had built. I needed to know what they were planning. And fate, it seemed, was about to hand me the truth. The next morning, I was in the kitchen, brewing coffee, the aroma mingling with the scent of jasmine from the garden outside. I was trying to steady my nerves when I heard voices drifting from the back parlor, where James and Clara thought I wouldn't be. The door was slightly ajar, and their words hit me like a punch to the gut. "She's stubborn, Clara," James hissed, his voice low but sharp. "If we don't move fast, she'll dig in her heels, and we'll lose everything." Clara's response was colder, calculated, like she was reading from a script. "Then we make sure she can't fight back. Dr. Hargrove's ready. He'll sign the papers. Say she's unfit. Once we get guardianship, the house is ours to sell." My heart stopped. Dr. Hargrove? The psychiatrist they'd insisted I see last month for stress? This wasn't just greed. This was a calculated plot to strip me of my rights, to lock me away like some senile old woman. I pressed myself against the wall, my breath shallow, barely daring to move. James's voice grew tighter, laced with panic. "The Atlanta deal's falling apart. If we don't sell this place soon, those lenders will come for us. You know what they're like." Clara laughed, a brittle, chilling sound. "Relax, honey. This house is our ticket out. A developer's already eyeing it for condos. We'll be sipping margaritas in Miami before she even knows what hit her." My blood ran cold. They weren't just after the house, they were planning to erase me, to declare me incompetent and ship me off to some facility. My home, the one William poured his heart into, with its wraparound porch and rose garden we'd tended together, would be bulldozed for profit. I wanted to storm in, scream at them, but I held back. Rage wouldn't win this. I needed to be smarter. I slipped back to the kitchen, my hands trembling as I poured the coffee, the cup clinking against the counter. Their words replayed in my mind, each one a fresh wound. James, the boy who'd once run through these halls, building forts out of blankets, was now plotting to betray me in the cruelest way. And Clara, with her fake smiles and designer dresses, was the puppet master pulling his strings. I remembered the first time she'd visited, her eyes scanning the crown molding, the antique chandeliers, like she was pricing it all. I'd thought it was just curiosity. Now I saw it for what it was, greed, plain and ugly. William's journal had warned me about James's hunger for wealth, but I'd never imagined it would come to this. They thought I was weak, a relic to be pushed aside. They didn't know the fight I had in me. I stood at the sink, staring out at the oak trees lining the property, their branches swaying in the Georgia breeze. The pain of their betrayal was still there. A knife, twisting deeper with every thought, but it was sharpening into something else. Resolve. I wasn't going to let them win. Not this house. Not my dignity. Not my life. I needed proof, something solid to stop them before they could destroy me. My mind raced, landing on Eleanor, my old friend from the Savannah Historical Society, a retired lawyer who'd seen her share of battles, and Thomas, a private investigator I'd met at a charity gala years ago. They could help me turn this around. I dried my hands, my jaw set. James and Clara thought they had me cornered, but they were about to learn just how wrong they were. I was ready to fight, and I'd make sure they never saw it coming. My coffee had gone cold, but my resolve was burning hotter than a Savannah summer. The sting of James's betrayal, his vicious act of smashing that cake into my face, his cold declaration that my home was already his, still seared my soul. But what I'd overheard yesterday morning in the back parlor, James and Clara plotting to have me declared unfit, lit a fire in me I hadn't felt since William passed. Their words, sharp and calculated, about bribing Dr. Hargrove to strip me of my rights, echoed in my head like a bad dream I couldn't shake. They thought I was a frail old woman ready to crumble under their schemes. They were dead wrong. I wasn't just going to sit in this historic Savannah home, waiting for them to bulldoze my life. I was done being their victim. It was time to fight back, and I knew exactly who to call. I stood in my kitchen, the scent of jasmine from the garden, mixing with the bitter coffee in my hand, and dialed Eleanor's number. Eleanor Dawson, my old friend from the Savannah Historical Society, had spent decades as a lawyer, tearing apart liars in courtrooms with the precision of a surgeon. Her voice came through, warm but sharp, like she already sensed trouble. "Helen, it's been too long. You okay?" I took a breath, steadying myself. "Not really, Eleanor. I need your help. It's James and Clara. They're trying to take the house. Everything." There was a pause, then her tone hardened. "Tell me every detail." I laid it out. The cake incident at my birthday party, their public demand for the deed, and the chilling conversation about Dr. Hargrove and their plan to sell my home for condos. Eleanor didn't flinch. "They're playing dirty, Helen. We need evidence, and we need it fast. Do you still have Thomas Reed's number, the PI from the gala a few years back?" I did. Thomas was discreet, a Savannah local who knew how to dig without leaving a trace. By noon, I was sitting in a quiet corner of a coffee shop on Broughton Street, far from the prying eyes of my neighbors. Thomas slid into the booth across from me, his gray eyes calm but focused, like a hunter sizing up his prey. He set a small black device on the table, no bigger than a keychain. "Voice recorder," he said, his voice low. "Legal in Georgia as long as you're part of the conversation. Keep it on you. Get them talking. James, Clara, anyone they're working with. Every word counts." I turned the device over in my hand, its weight light but heavy with possibility. "They're moving fast, Thomas," I said, my voice tight. "They're talking about a doctor, guardianship, selling the house to pay off James's debts." He nodded, scribbling in a small notebook. "I'll look into this Dr. Hargrove. If he's taking bribes, there'll be a paper trail, bank transfers, emails, something. And James's financials? I'm already on it. His Atlanta project's a mess. He's in deep with some rough people." I leaned back, my heart pounding but my mind clear. For the first time since that humiliating night, I felt a flicker of control. But I had to be smart, play the part they expected. "They think I'm weak," I told Thomas, my voice low, almost a growl. "Good," he replied, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Let them. The more they underestimate you, the more they'll slip up." Eleanor had said the same when we spoke later that afternoon, her voice steady over the phone. "Act like you're softening, Helen. Let them think you're considering their offer. Nod, hesitate, play the confused old lady. It'll make them bold, and bold means sloppy." I could almost hear her courtroom confidence, the kind that had made grown men sweat. "You're not alone in this," she added. "We'll build a case so tight they'll choke on it." Back at home, I tucked the recorder into my purse, my hands steady now. I walked through the house, past the portraits of William and me, our wedding day smiles frozen in time. This place was more than walls and windows. It was our story, our sacrifices. James and Clara thought they could erase that with a forged signature and a crooked doctor. I wasn't going to let them. That evening, Clara called, her voice syrupy sweet, asking to come by tomorrow to talk things over. I smiled into the phone, my voice soft, almost frail. Of course, dear, I'd like that. She thought she had me right where she wanted me. Perfect. I was ready to turn their game against them, to let their own words bury them. The fight was on, and I was just getting started. The air in my Savannah home felt charged, like the calm before a Georgia thunderstorm. I'd spent days playing the part James and Clara expected. Meek, frail, teetering on the edge of surrender, their smug confidence, built on the belief that they'd outsmarted me, fueled my resolve. That cake James smashed into my face at my 70th birthday, his cruel shout, "This house is already mine!" still burned in my memory, as did their chilling plan to have me declared unfit, overheard in the back parlor. With Eleanor's legal savvy and Thomas's investigative grit, I had what I needed: recordings, financial records, proof of their scheme to bribe Dr. Hargrove and sell my home for profit. Tonight I'd invited them to dinner, their favorite roast lamb and pecan pie laid out like a trap. The recorder was tucked in my pocket, and my heart pounded with a mix of fury and anticipation. This wasn't just about saving my house, it was about reclaiming my life. James and Clara arrived right on time, stepping into the dining room with the polished ease of people who thought they'd already won. Clara's blonde hair was swept into a perfect bun, her smile as fake as the pearls around her neck. James, tall and broad, carried a bottle of Chardonnay, offering it like a peace offering. "Mother, you look well," he said, his voice smooth, practiced. I nodded, my own smile soft, disarming. "Thank you, dear. Sit, please. I thought we could talk about the house tonight." Their eyes lit up, greedy and unguarded, as they took their seats under the glow of the chandelier. The table gleamed, set with William's old silverware, a silent reminder of the legacy they wanted to destroy. We ate, the conversation light, Clara gushing about her new charity project, James mentioning a golf game with Savannah's mayor. But I could feel their impatience, like wolves circling a wounded deer. After dessert, I set my napkin down, my hands steady, despite the storm inside me. "James, Clara," I began, my voice soft but deliberate. "You've been so eager for me to sign over the house. I've been thinking about it." Clara leaned forward, her smile tightening. "That's wonderful, Helen. We just want to take the burden off you." James nodded, his tone patronizing. "You don't need this stress, Mom. Let us handle everything. It's what's best." I let the silence stretch, watching their confidence grow. Then I reached into my pocket and placed the small, black recorder on the table, its presence like a grenade. "Before we talk about papers," I said, my voice hardening, "let's listen to something." I pressed play. Their voices filled the room, crisp and damning. "Dr. Hargrove's ready," Clara's voice sneered. "He'll sign the papers, say she's unfit." James's reply followed, cold and urgent. "We need that house sold fast, Clara. The lenders are breathing down my neck." Their faces drained of color, James's jaw locking tight, Clara's eyes widening like a trapped animal's. I stopped the recording, my gaze unyielding. "You thought you could steal my home, my life, and lock me away like some useless old woman." My voice trembled, not with fear, but with rage. "You thought I wouldn't fight back," James sputtered, his charm crumbling. "Mom, that's not what. It sounds like you're twisting it." Clara's voice was shrill, desperate. "We were worried about you, Helen. You're not well." I laughed, a bitter, cutting sound. "Not well? I've been well enough to record every lie, every scheme. I've got bank records, Thomas's reports, everything. You bribed a doctor to declare me incompetent. That's not concern, that's fraud." James shot up, his chair scraping the floor. You can't prove anything. I leaned forward, my eyes burning into his. Oh, I can. And I already have. The police have everything, James. They're on their way. Clara gasped, clutching her napkin like a lifeline, tears welling up. Helen, please, we didn't mean it like that. But I was done with their lies. You made your choices, I said, my voice low, unyielding. You chose greed over family. You chose to betray me. The room felt smaller, the air thick with their panic. I stood, my spine straight, feeling William's strength in me. This house is mine, my life is mine, and you'll answer for what you've done. As I spoke, a sharp knock echoed from the front door, slicing through the tension. James froze, his face pale. Clara's tears fell, smearing her perfect makeup. The knock came again, louder, final. I turned toward the sound, my heart steady. This wasn't the end, not yet. The real reckoning was about to unfold, and Savannah would see it all. The knock at the front door echoed through my Savannah home, like a gavel slamming in a courtroom. My heart was steady, but the air in the dining room crackled with panic as James and Clara sat frozen, their faces pale, as the damning words from my recorder still hung between us. I'd just played their own voices, plotting to have me declared unfit, to steal my home and sell it out from under me. James's shout at my 70th birthday. This house is already mine! And the cake he'd smashed into my face were nothing compared to the betrayal I'd uncovered. With Eleanor's legal guidance and Thomas's evidence, I'd turned their scheme against them. And now the police were here. Clara's tear-streaked face crumpled, her perfect composure shattered, while James's eyes darted like a cornered animal's. I stood tall, my voice calm but unyielding. You thought you could bury me, but this is where it ends. The knock came again, sharper, insistent. I nodded to Maria, my housekeeper who'd been waiting quietly in the hall. She opened the door, and 2 uniformed officers stepped inside, followed by a detective in a crisp gray suit, his badge glinting under the foyer's chandelier. The neighbors, always quick to sniff out drama in Savannah's historic district, had already gathered outside, their silhouettes visible through the windows, phones raised to capture the scandal. Mrs. Helen Parker, the detective asked, his voice professional but kind. I'm Detective Larson. We're here regarding your complaint of fraud and elder abuse. I gestured toward James and Clara, my gaze never leaving them. They're right here, Detective. James shot up, his chair clattering to the floor. This is insane, he bellowed, his voice cracking with desperation. She's twisting everything. We were trying to help her. Clara clutched his arm, sobbing, her mascara running like black rivers down her cheeks. Helen, please, don't do this. We didn't mean any harm. I didn't flinch. Their lies, their fake tears, couldn't touch me now. You meant to strip me of my home, my rights, I said, my voice low, cutting like a blade. You bribed a doctor, planned to lock me away. That's not help. That's betrayal. The detective picked up the recorder from the table, his expression grim. We've got hours of recordings, Mr. Parker, plus financial records and witness statements. You're both being detained for questioning. The officers moved forward, cuffs in hand. James's face twisted with rage as he pointed at me. You'll regret this, Mom. You're ruining our lives. I met his gaze, unflinching. You ruined your own, James. You chose greed over family. Clara collapsed into a chair, her sobs turning to wails as an officer gently pulled her up, clicking the cuffs around her wrists. No, please, she cried, her voice breaking. James, do something. But James was powerless now, his broad shoulders slumping as the second officer cuffed him. The neighbors outside pressed closer, their whispers carrying through the open door. Mrs. Thompson from next door, the Wilsons across the street, all watching the golden couple of Savannah fall. As the officers led them out, the flashing blue lights of the police cruisers painted my front lawn in stark, rhythmic pulses. James's shouts grew fainter, his accusations drowned by the hum of the crowd. Clara stumbled, her high heels catching on the cobblestone path, her once perfect appearance now a mess of tears and shame. I stood on the front steps, my hands folded, my spine straight as the oak trees lining my property. The pain of James's betrayal still lingered, a dull ache in my chest, but it was overshadowed by a fierce clarity. I'd fought for this home, for William's legacy, for myself, and I'd won. The detective lingered, his notepad in hand. "We'll need you to come by the station tomorrow, Mrs. Parker, to finalize your statement," he said. "Your evidence is airtight. This won't be a short process, but they're not slipping out of this." I nodded, my voice steady. "I'll be there, detective. Thank you." He tipped his head and walked back to the cruiser, the crowd parting for him. The neighbors' phones were still up, capturing every second of the drama. Let them. Savannah would talk about this for years, the day James and Clara Parker fell from grace. I turned back to my home, the roses in the garden catching the moonlight. The fight wasn't over, not completely. I still had to secure this house for good, to make sure no one could ever threaten it again. And I knew just how to do it. The front door closed with a soft click, sealing out the chaos of flashing police lights and the neighbors' whispers. The Savannah night settled around my home, the quiet hum of crickets replacing the harsh sounds of James and Clara's downfall. I stood in the foyer, my hands still folded, the weight of their betrayal, James's cruel cake throwing at my 70th birthday, their scheme to declare me unfit and sell my house, finally lifting. The dining room, where I'd just played their own damning words on the recorder, exposing their plot with Dr. Hargrove, still smelled faintly of roast lamb and pecan pie. But now it felt different. This house, William's legacy, was mine again. Undisputed, untouchable. I'd fought for it, not with screams or tears, but with the kind of strength that comes from years of holding a family together. And for the first time in months, I felt free. I walked out to the garden, the moonlight casting a silver glow over the roses William had planted decades ago. Their petals swayed gently in the warm Georgia breeze, as if whispering his approval. I knelt beside them, my fingers brushing the soft blooms, and let out a breath I'd been holding since that awful night, when James's voice rang out. "This house is already mine." The pain of his betrayal, the way he and Clara had schemed to strip me of my rights, had nearly broken me. But I'd turned it around with Eleanor's legal wisdom and Thomas's evidence, recordings, bank records, proof of their fraud. The police had taken them away, their reputation shattered before Savannah's watchful eyes. The neighbors' phones had caught every second, and by morning, the story would be all over town, maybe even the local news. I stood, my knees creaking, but my spirit soaring. This house wasn't just walls and windows, it was the heart of everything William and I had built. The wraparound porch where we'd sipped sweet tea on lazy Sundays, the library where we'd read to James as a boy, the dining room where we'd hosted countless church suppers. Every corner held a memory, a piece of us. James and Clara had seen it as a quick fix for their failures, a way to erase their debts. They'd underestimated me, thinking I was just an old widow clinging to the past. But I was Helen Parker, and I'd fought harder for this home than they could ever understand. I walked back inside, my steps lighter, and paused at the mirror in the foyer. My reflection stared back, gray hair, lines etched deep from years of love and loss, but eyes that burned with a fire I hadn't seen in a while. "You did it, Helen," I whispered to myself, my voice soft but steady. "You held the line." I thought of William, his journal entries urging me to stand tall, to never let greed win. He'd always believed in me, even when I doubted myself. I touched the gold locket around my neck, a gift from him on our 25th anniversary, and felt his presence, like a warm hand on my shoulder. This victory wasn't just mine, it was ours. I moved to the living room, sinking into the old velvet sofa, the one we'd picked out together at a Savannah antique shop. The quiet was different now, not heavy, not lonely, but peaceful. Like the calm after a storm, I could still hear the echoes of James's shouts, Clara's fake tears, but they were distant, powerless. The neighbors would talk, of course. Mrs. Thompson would probably call her book club by dawn, and the Wilsons would spread the tale over coffee at the diner. Let them. I'd spent too long worrying about appearances, about keeping the peace. Now I stood for something stronger, truth, legacy, myself. But this wasn't the end. I needed to make sure this house, this life, was protected for good. Eleanor had mentioned a trust, a legal shield to keep James and Clara, or anyone else, from ever threatening what was mine again. Tomorrow, I'd meet her to finalize it, to lock this home away from greedy hands forever. I leaned back, closing my eyes, the scent of roses still lingering on my fingers. The fight had been brutal, but it had brought me back to myself. And there was one more thing to do, to share this story, to let others know they could stand up too, no matter their age. I wasn't just a widow in a big house. I was a woman who'd fought and won, and I had a message for anyone who'd listen. I stood in my garden, the Savannah sunrise painting the roses in hues of gold and pink, each petal a quiet testament to the life William and I built. The pain of James's betrayal, his cruel act of smashing that cake in my face, his cold claim that my home was already his, still lingered, but it no longer held me captive. I'd faced him and Clara, exposed their scheme to steal my home with Eleanor's wisdom and Thomas's evidence, and watched them crumble as the police led them away. This house, with its creaking floors and memories etched in every corner, was mine again, not just in deed, but in spirit. I'd fought, not with rage, but with the steady strength of a woman who'd learned to stand tall at 70. And now, as I looked out at the garden, I felt something new, peace, hard-won and precious. This fight taught me something I want to share with you. No matter your age, your strength isn't in your years. It's in your heart, your will to protect what matters. For me, it was this home, William's legacy, the roses we planted together. For you, it might be your family, your dreams, or your own voice. Don't let anyone tell you you're too old, too weak to fight for it. I was underestimated, dismissed as a widow past her prime, but I proved them wrong. You can too. Hold tight to what's yours, and never let greed or doubt steal it away. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of your own battles, I'd love to hear about it. Drop a comment below. Share what you're fighting for, what keeps you strong. Hit that like button if you believe in standing up, no matter the odds. And please join our community at Voices of Mother Ruth by subscribing. We're here to share stories of resilience, stories like mine, stories that matter. I stepped back inside, the morning light warm on my face, ready to lock this house in a trust, to keep it safe forever. And I knew, deep down, this wasn't just my victory, it was a call for all of us to rise.